The proposal relates to the Bellways Phase 2, shown on the right hand side. This is the Phase 2 application here, this is the Phase 2 application there. The blue, the purple, in this case on this, is the Phase 1 development. This is a Section 73 application to vary two conditions applied to earlier approvals. The application has been reported to committee at the request of Councillor Condacor. On the left of the screen, as I say, is the red line of the location plan showing the Phase 2 and the Phase 1 developments. Highway safety, the proposal seeks to vary the approved layout plan in condition 2 of the original approval. The changes are minimal and simply replaces a no-through road to continue the road up to the northern boundary. This is to link in with the Calendar Farm development approved to the north of the site. We're referring to that access there. This is to link in, as I say, with the Calendar Farm development, which will then link into the approved Persimmon site and across Hile Lane to Top Farm and into the Taylor Wimpey development off Weddington Road. The amendment will allow a route for the proposed distributor road from the Long Shoot through to Weddington Road. The requirement for this is within the emerging borough plan. County Highways have no objection to the amendment, and it's considered a betterment or gain by officers. Condition 9 refers to the treatment of biodiversity within the phase. Biodiversity offsetting is used to calculate what the site provides pre and post development. The legislation states there should be a net gain. The applicant is requesting an amendment to the last sentence within previously approved condition 9. Please refer to page 105 for the full condition. I don't want to read it all out. The applicant wishes to omit the last sentence, which I will read out, which states the ELSMP, which stands for Ecological and Landscape Strategy Management Plan, must also demonstrate how measured across the site as a whole, the measures it continues will achieve a net gain for the biodiversity of the site, rather than simply neutralising the impact on the development. Unfortunately, it's now recognised that the condition is weak, as it does not allow for any offsetting to occur off-site, as would be the norm now. The developer has shown that there will be a small loss of biodiversity on the site with the approved layout, which includes open space. The wording of the condition means that we cannot accept off-site, and as such we cannot now insist on biodiversity offsetting in another location. The situation is that even if members refuse to vary this condition, we could not take enforcement on this condition. This wording was used when biodiversity offsetting was in its infancy, and the borough had only just started requesting a measurement and mitigation for biodiversity. Since the time this was written, we have moved on, and the calculations are carried out at the outline stage, and any off-site provision is agreed at the outline stage, as is normally dealt with through a monetary agreement, which is then used to enhance biodiversity elsewhere in the locality. In real terms, it's considered that approval to vary the highway layout would have a benefit across the area and the other planned development, and that refusal of the biodiversity condition would be difficult to defend at appeal or, indeed, as I said, enforce against. It is therefore considered that, subject to the conditions as set out in the agenda, it's considered that the planning balance weighs in support of this application. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Connor.
It would be useful to look at the diagrams, page 112, page 113. Page 113 shows the connection, the condition 2. Really support that. This application should never have been allowed not to have connections to future developments, because that is the way people will get eventually to any schools and shops on Calendar Farm, but also people on Calendar Farm, until the school is built on Calendar Farm, will get to schools on St Nicholas Park. And it may be 5 years or 10 years before they get as far as building another school. So that condition, really fine. We should always have that connection, and we need to make sure there's no ransom hostage strips to make sure we don't get these connections. But I take you on to page 112. You see how dense the site is. The site phase 2 is on there. it has virtually no open space. The only open space is the plain open space, and Bellway built the plain open space on top of underground tanks. So you can't plant much trees. It's an absolutely appalling design, phase 2. And if you look next to there, that's actually a Davison development. You see how much open it is. There is nothing on phase 2 of the Bellway development to support nature. There's not the hedges, the open spaces, the flower meadows. We've seen loads of planning applications over this night at the committee and loads of other nights at the committee with meadows and trees and something to give a bit of a nature flavour to it. This is incredibly dense housing with no nature, no ecological benefit at all. And there's a condition in there which was put in when this was approved for the developer to work out how to put in somewhere into the plan some biodiversity to mitigate the loss of all the open farmland. Bellway's 3 phases. Phase 1 is a bit along the bottom that juts onto the existing estate. That has a bit of biodiversity, but is very limited. And phase 3 is yet to be determined. And Bellway have really played the system by actually putting in these applications in little bits to provide no public benefit if they can get away with it. There's no schools, there's no shops, and there's a biodiversity loss. It's absolutely massive on this site. This is phase 2. Phase 3 hasn't been determined, and I asked the committee to look at either adding biodiversity loss from this site into a gain on other 2 phases, or doing something else like losing a few houses on the site, because we have really mucked up here to allow a development and actually say we will sort it out later by making sure we do this calculation, which is an impossible calculation to do. It was obvious there's no space for biodiversity. This is an absolute crap design, and it's the worst design on the North and the Inn. The design we considered earlier, I don't like it, but at least it has some meadow, some pond. It is a deliverable environment. This is unpleasant, and Bellway have got away with cheating here.
Any points of clarification? Michelle,
Yeah, thank you. I'll just find the right page. Earlier this evening we've heard lots of things approved subject to the conditions written in there. And it just really concerns me that it would appear that these conditions aren't worth the paper they're written on in a lot of cases and things. Because the number 9, no development shall commence until an ELSMP has been submitted to and approved in writing by the council. So before any houses were built, this plan should have been accepted and what have you. And that plan should demonstrate how we were going to get a net gain of biodiversity. Therefore, that condition hasn't even been adhered to, because it should have been apparent as soon as that was put forward that it wasn't going to, be possible and things. I understand that it doesn't, how it was written doesn't allow for offsetting elsewhere as would happen now, but that doesn't make it acceptable to us as the public who live there, see it all the while and things. It's unacceptable, I believe, to simply discard the condition without substituting a different condition or agreement that allows offsetting, somewhere else, particularly as there is adjacent land, phase 3 that they want to do. I mean, we actually are right by this site, on the original St Nicholas Park, and we have already seen a decline in, the animals, birds and things. So, we don't want to lose any more. And the whole thing should have actually had a net gain. We've just been told that not only is it not even just staying still, we're actually losing biodiversity and things. Therefore, I'm really concerned that, we are absolutely being, thrown out to the lines in effect and things, because, people say, oh, well, it's okay because they're going to have to do this, they're going to have to do that and things. And then suddenly we're being told, oh no, that can't be done and things. We'll just throw it away, we'll just drop that bit that they need to have a net gain and things. So, I mean, we've already been told that it would be unenforceable, so I really don't know where we go and things. But I think it is absolutely unacceptable that you can just discard a condition, development started on the, it said on the application form, on the 1st of May 2016. So we're over 2 years into this. So it shouldn't be coming up now when the building is just about, getting towards its final stages. And now suddenly, we haven't got enough biodiversity and things. It's just not acceptable. I think there needs to be some way that the committee can find to, rewrite condition or have to put some other agreement in place to, mitigate this. Well, I don't know what to call it. It's dreadful.
Thank you. Perfect time. Any points of clarification? No, thank you. Jackie, anything to come back on the moment?
I think, hopefully Catherine will agree with me. We do take this as a learning curve. We do hold our hands up. We have learned by this. As I say, biodiversity was in its infancy when this was approved. We realise our mistakes and hopefully we're correcting them now on our applications. Having said that, what's approved is approved in terms of the number of houses on the site. We can't go against that. We can't ask, as I say, with offsetting for it to go on to another phase. We have to take each phase on an individual basis. In terms of the ecological construction management, I don't know whether...
Yeah, it was actually the developer that highlighted it to us when he submitted the plans to us in conjunction with the condition about the biodiversity. So the condition and the plans that were submitted as part of the rest of the condition then highlighted the fact that there was a small loss of biodiversity and the condition itself didn't allow anything else to happen. And that's why because there isn't a mechanism for anything else to happen, he highlighted the fact that it was impossible for him to meet the condition, which is why he submitted this application. All we can do is to try and negotiate with them. We haven't got any mechanism to make them do anything else on any of the other sites, but we can try and negotiate as part of the development, phase 3 of the development that we are still doing.
Okay, thank you.
Non-clarification, I thought we were getting into that.
Can I, to enable debate to take place, move the recommendation, which is a grant of permission subject to a deed of variation to the original legal agreement. Is that sound? Second motion. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, apologies for jumping in. But I was trying to focus on the depends on. I think I might need a bit more clarification on this biodiversity thing.
Yeah.
So, if I'm getting it right, now initially we had where we were saying you have to try and provide a betterment within the site. Now they've said they can't do that. Rules have changed. So we're now looking at trying to provide a contribution for it to be done off-site. Okay. So what happens if, and there's all these other sites around it, if all the other sites there, amongst them, all have this condition or apply to have this condition, they say we can't mitigate the biodiversity in here, you then end up with a domino effect where it keeps going on throughout the sites. You could end up then mitigating an impact in St Nicholas, and I'm taking it to the extreme, and Poplarwall. How is that mitigating, ultimately, the wrong or the harm which is being caused by this development? That's where I'm struggling to try and see how we get past this, because there isn't a harm. How are we going to try and make it better elsewhere?
Go back a little bit, I think. The history of biodiversity offsetting is that Warwickshire County Council actually acted as a pilot throughout the country into the new legislation. So that was mainly through the County Council, but we obviously have our own parks section here who can do the same thing. So in the other districts, it was the County Council that did the calculations on behalf of the districts. In here it was our district, so they worked together on that. If you remember the history of all the applications up to the north of the Nuneaton, both Bellway phases, phase 1 and phase 2, were one of the earliest developments that came forward. I think I'm right in thinking there's not even a condition on phase 1, because that was at a time when we weren't looking for biodiversity to be even measured, let alone any offset. So when we first started to look at biodiversity offsetting, we came up with this sort of condition, which said that they should be able to do it on site. This and other developments have led us not to use this condition anymore. We either use a different condition, or Wendy will know because she puts it in most of the legal agreements, we've now put it into the legal agreements as well. So it is covered in that way. Generally speaking, we wouldn't ask for offsetting unless we controlled the land where the offsetting was going to. So in the instance of the site, you may remember at Mansetta Road, the old reservoir site, we did ask for some offsetting monies, but that's being spent on our land. And that's quite that's quite likely to happen now, where we ask for offsetting monies for sites not within the application site, and it is likely to be our land. So we still have control over that. On some of the bigger sites, similar like Calendar Farm, which is having it within the legal agreement, I think that legal agreement's not yet signed, the offsetting will be on the rest of the site. So it may not necessarily be where the houses are, it will be on the rest of the site, or within land, as I say, within our control. If the only offsetting, I know you were using Poplar and Weddington as quite, but if the offsetting was away from the site, then we wouldn't consider that that was acceptable. And so that we wouldn't be accepting that of a developer if they couldn't offset it very close to us.
So where will the offsetting be happening for this?
Well, because they can't have any offsetting with this condition, the only thing we can do, and we haven't got the teeth, if you like, to make them do it, is negotiate with Bellways to put more than they would normally on the site, which is phase 3. But that's subject to the application meeting all the other technical things, enough to bring it to committee in the first place with the recommendation of approval, and we haven't got to that stage.
So basically, we're up a gum tree.
So it may well be that on phase 2 we don't get any offsetting for the little bit of loss that's now come to light when they submitted the details in light of this condition. So yes, we accept that the condition itself didn't allow for that offsetting, or didn't allow for any mechanism to offset any loss.
Okay, any other member? Councillor Bowman.
How much of a loss is it? Can you quantify it in any way at all?
What happens is, when they obviously, what they look is at the biodiversity as the site as a greenfield site, and what the biodiversity would be as a developed site. So they're allowed to count gardens in that.
Because I was going to make
Contrary to what Councillor Condicourt says, I have a fox visiting me recently. I don't know whether you've seen it around in my garden.
Yeah.
So some gardens will have, the gardens are allowed to be included in that, and any open space, either incidental open space, such as the suds that run through the site here, the drainage areas, or formal play and open space. Some of that is also allowed in part of the calculation. Councillor Condicourt's quite right. If you look at the plan is quite dense. It doesn't include great areas of open space because there's quite a bit of open space in phase 1. So there is a loss.
Only it strikes me that the density on this is because the houses are close together,
Yes,
but they still have gardens.
they do.
And the gardens, all right, there's fences in between, but the biodiversity occurs over any green space and trees develop and so on. So there is plenty of opportunity for some biodiversity to appear as a natural result of the gardens being laid out.
There is, but the developer has no control over that.
I'm looking at a planning application that's likely to come, and the people who back onto it have got pitifully small gardens. And this goes back to the 1950s and 60s, if you like. Really small, and if you compare the size of the houses to the gardens here, I'm not saying it's generous, but it is more than my near neighbour has, and he's complaining about a development at the other side of his fence. which will remove a lot. But it just strikes me that you can get carried away by what appears to be density. This isn't even in colour. It's not offering that comfort, if you like, of seeing where green space
Do a
is
site
in
visit.
terms of people's going.
Do a site visit. You can see how dense it is.
Councillor Condicourt, you've already spoken, thank you. Any other member? No? In that case, the recommendation to grant planning conditions subject to a deed of variation to the original legal agreement has been moved and seconded. All those in favour of that? And against? And abstentions? Okay, so that's approved. We can move